Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, dear viewers. Welcome to tonight's lecture organized by the UK Talim Department. As per our tradition, we will start the program today with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Can I request Sharfur Rahman Sahib to deliver the tilawat and its English translation?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لما تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. I have just recited verses 6 to 10 of chapter 61 Surah Saf, and the English translation of the verse is as follows. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. And remember when Moses said to his people, O my people, why do you vex and slander me? And you know that I am Allah's messenger unto you. So when they deviated from the right cause, Allah caused their hearts to deviate. for Allah guides not rebellious people. And remember when Jesus, son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, surely I am Allah's messenger unto you, fulfilling that which is before me of the Torah and giving glad tidings of the messenger who will come after me. His name will be Ahmad, and when he came to them with clear proofs, they said, this is clear enchantment. But who could do greater wrong than one who forges the lie against Allah while he is called to Islam? Allah guides not the wrongdoing people. They desire to extinguish the light of Allah with the breath of their mouth, but Allah will perfect His light, even if the disbelievers hate it. He it is who has sent His messenger with the guidance and the religion of truth, that He may cause it to prevail over all religions, even if those who associate partners with God hate it. Jazakumullah.
Jazakumullah, Sharaf Sahib. Um, Tonight, we have the pleasure and the privilege of being joined by Professor Naseer Ahmad Habib Sahib. Professor Habib Sahib is currently serving as a research scholar at the Ahmadiyya Archive Department and has previously served the Jamaat in numerous positions. It gives me great pleasure to hand over to Professor Naseer Ahmad Habib Sahib to deliver tonight's lecture.
Jazakallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The topic of my lecture is Ahmadiyya Rehabilitation of Islamic History. Civilization had to face both the intellectual and military challenge, but neither of the two could ever wipe it out. But 18th century brought such a horrid and hooting stanza of challenge which shook the very foundation of the Muslim world violently. Allah says in the Holy Quran, God will not grant our but what was happening here? Abul Kalam Azad says Napoleon launched an attack on Egypt. Murad Bak took the advice from the ulama of Azhar. They gave him advice to start the recitation of Bukhari Sharif, Khatm Bukhari Sharif. But before this recitation of Bukhari Sharif came to an end, Napoleon inflicted a crushing defeat upon Murad Bak. In the same manner, when the Russian armies were mounting an attack on Bukhara, Amir Bukhara gave order to hold Khatme Khwajgan in all the mosques, madrasas, monasteries, as the slogans of Ya Muqallibal Qulub, Ya Muhawwilul Ahwal were being chanted in the monasteries. Russian troops were entering the city with their roaring gun. What could be the result where slogans were confronted with gunfire? This was the situation. जैसी अब है तेरी महफिल कभी ऐसी तो न थी. Things have never been like this. This was the scenario which has been described succinctly by Cantwell Smith. The fundamental malaise of modern Muslim is a sense that something has gone wrong with Islamic history. The fundamental problem of modern Muslim is how to rehabilitate that history. Different Islamic movements then emerged with two conflicting but natural responses: Herodian, modernist, and zealot, fundamentalist. First of all, we take the view of Herodian response. The Herodian would emphasize adopting the ways and means of the dominating civilization that they might confine the lion in its own den. When we survey the history of the glimpses of Herodian, No one says that nomadic state could last more than 3 generations, that is 120 years. Historical evidence confirms this statement. The Ottoman Turk came into decadent Muslim and Turkish Asia Minor in the 13th century, having been inspired by their nomadic background. They introduced the system of janissary into the army. It was the dominant factor responsible for the unusual prolongation of Turkish Empire. However, it was, according to Haldadib, due to the Ottoman strength, Islamic principle of social justice, and non-discrimination of race, Greek ideas of physical training, and Roman realism, that this nomadic state magnificently survived. Haldadib is in her analysis is very right. In fact, Islam had been a great creative and synthesizing force that picked everything up what seemed to have been better for the society and humanity. This creativity and broad-mindedness stem from spirituality, but life is not static. Every moment brings with it new problem to be solved. In Turkey, the ulama stuck fast to their scholastic philosophy and theology, which were more Hellenic than Islamic. The ulama took it for granted that human knowledge had not grown beyond what it was in the 13th century. Salim III, 1807 to 1807, was well versed with modern knowledge, realized superiority of the West, and started organizing the army on the Western pattern. The process of modernization, which was started by Salim III, reached its climax in the effort of Mustafa Kemal, who opened up not only country's border for European goods but also for European ideas. Mustafa Kemal modernism was a reaction against the Sultan Abdul Hamid's policies. Uh, uh, he abolished caliphate in 1924. Islam had to be extirpated from all sphere of Turkish life. Then on November 3rd, 1926, the whole Turkish alphabet was changed from one written in Arabic script to one in written Latinized form. And in addition, courses in Arabic and Persian were deleted from the high school curriculum. As a result, modern Turkey cut off from much of its Islamic past, since the new generation of Turks would not be able to read anything printed before 1926. Modernism reached its zenith, Mustafa Kemal efforts. But what was the outcome? Has Turkey been able to join the ranks of developed nation? The answer is obvious. This types of response has certain flaws in it. It is apt simply to enlarge the quantity of the machine-made products of imitator society instead of releasing new energies in human soul. The second weakness is that this can bring salvation only to a small minority of any community. The majority cannot look forward even to becoming passive member of the imitator civilization ruling class. In the same manner, we can observe these glimpses in India, Indo-Pak subcontinent, in Aligarh movement. In the Muslim elite that was enjoying some privileges even at that stage after the debacle of 1857 fell into abyss of ignominy and oblivion. Sir Syed was watching the whole episode critically. He was the opinion that if Muslims didn't adjust them with changing circumstances, they would, as a nation, be annihilated. With this end in view, on the political side, he took venture of removing misunderstanding between Muslim and the British, and on the other hand, he tried to interpret Islam in the light of modern scientific discoveries and changing social system. First of all, he started interpreting Quran in accordance with literal meaning, but later, on finding it hard, he trod the path of Akhwan Safa in interpreting the Quran allegorically. In this venture of harmonizing Islam with the demands of modern age, especially he and his colleague generally discarded Hadith, fiqh, consensus, declaring them untrustworthy. They curtailed Islam to adjust to the newly introduced capitalist system in such a way that even some Western authors made it a target of their criticism. And W.C. Smith says Sir Syed, in rejecting the old fiqh, did not replace it with a new one, nor has any of successor done so, but emphasized only general principle of the Quran. The prophetic Makkah scripture quoted more and more, the legalist Medina ones less. How wavy was Sir Sayyid's attitude in connection with the interpretation of the verses of the Holy Quran as compared with the bold stance of the founder of the Ahmadiyya community, Prophet Messiah, Islam, who said, "Whosoever gives up even a single injunction of the Holy Quran will close the door of his salvation with his own hand." Sir Sayyid went further and held that religion was of secondary importance in the process of evolution of civilization, and he also separated morality from religion. Advancing further, his colleague, having discarded the basic Islamic sources, declared that the predominant portion of the Quran consisted of moral injunction, historical stories, and prophecies that had no relevance with cultural, social, and political historical of history of mankind. How this kind of wavering, faltering attitude towards the constituents of faith can become a source of inspiration and motivating force for the younger generation to withstand temptation and to offer sacrifices for good causes. This was the reason that in Aligarh College some students established anti-guard society. Having received the news, Allama Iqbal became so perturbed that he could not sleep. Makatibe Iqbal, Naseer Niazi. This made our younger generation confused and disoriented. This confusion created an intellectual vacuum, and the younger generation was unable to come out of this state of mind, like Hamlet, Shakespeare famous character, who, despite possessing all qualities, could not resolve the riddle to be or not to be due to his confusion. They lost their source of inspiration, commitment, and dedication. This is the reason that we have the most corrupt agency of the world, which can support any dictator, which may usurp the power with impunity because there is no depth of people belonging to judiciary, journalism, clergy, and politics who can keep up any dictatorial regime for their material interests. Sir Syed and Maulvi Chirag Ali could not realize that social demand and modern philosophical concept on the basis of which they were ready to sacrifice their Islamic heritage may prove to be mere illusion in the light of future discovery. In this way, new generation dichotomized by the two culture was rendered incapable of accomplishing any creative work due to the influence of inferiority complex. The character of Dipti Nazir's novel seem to have been inspired with the moral books of Christian missionaries. They suffered from acute inferiority complex when they compared themselves with English. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan wrote, one of his friends, "I can truly say that the native of India, high and low, merchant, petty shopkeeper, educated, illiterate, when contrasted with the English in education, manner, and uprightness, are as like them as a dirty animal to an able and handsome man." The English have reason for believing us in India to be imbecile brute. Due to this inferiority complex, offspring of the elite became disoriented from the basic sources of our culture. Once a former Prime Minister of Pakistan wrote to his daughter, who was receiving education at Oxford University, "You have all the books you need. Read about Napoleon Bonaparte, the most complete man of modern history." Daughter of the East, page 37. Our leaders do suggest something different to their offspring and offer different discourse to common man in order to achieve popularity among the masses. Allah says in the Holy Quran, "O you who have believed, why do you say what you do not do?" Only promised Messiah took bold stance and made an announcement to all and sundry that there is only one leader for all ages. The sons of Adam have no messenger and intercessor but Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the chosen one. Peace be, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. Endeavor therefore to cultivate true love for this prophet of glory and majesty, and do not give precedence to anyone over him, so that in the heaven you may be counted as those who have attained salvation. In this way, ignoring the real spiritual factor, when the Muslim elite tried, under the inspiration of Sir Sayyid school of thought, tried to achieve a material target, but what they did get has been described by Ayush Qureshi. The craze for material development so gripped the ruling elite for Pakistan that even without achieving much in the way of scientific progress, it has already broken the country into two parts and threatened further disintegration. 150 years have elapsed since the time of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. What is the outcome of this struggle? The GDP of the whole Islamic world is less than the GDP of Japan. What is the reason responsible for this fiasco? According to Fazl Rahman, an enlightened Muslim scholar, it is only the failure of such a plans to achieve their economic target that has led sociologists and economists, generally Western, to an awareness that the intangible human element with its moral factor may be all important, although they are still not prepared to do much about it. When this basic factor that is responsible to release creative energy in the human, what is the basic factor that is responsible to release creative energy in the human soul? According to our view, higher values that are experienced and infused by a great human being are responsible to infuse social justice and cohesion in the society, and that is based in the society, and society that is based on social justice and motivated by higher values can release creative energy in the soul. We cannot borrow values from outside our cultural paradigm. It is an engineer, to put the matter in quite clearly, an engineer may know how to build a bridge, but why he should build one and with what efficiency and zeal depends entirely on the values that motivate him. His skill, therefore, must be made part and parcel of total cultural pattern. Secularism could not be introduced just with a stroke of pen. It has its own history, values, and its own heroes. Now we come to zealot response. Zealot would love shrinking in their shell, concentrating on their own values, purity, and technique in order to come out of this quagmire. Ulama had been very conscious to regain past glory. Once discussion was held among the ulama, Indian ulama, whether keeping in view their scarcity of resources, their means resources, they should participate in the war of 1857 or not, 1857 or not. A question was asked, are we as resourceless as Muslims were in the Battle of Badr? All the ulama unanimously answered in the negative. They decided in favor of war and met with disaster, and when tried in the court, according to Maulana Mufti Mahmud, they used lies to escape. The ulama did not seem to have really realized that at that time the Holy Prophet ﷺ was himself there. Muslims who participated in the Battle of Badr were gifted with unbounded spiritual resources and wealth of the Holy Prophet's prayers. How mistaken were the ulama who were comparing themselves materially but not spiritually with the early Muslims. Muslim clerics have been seeking causes for the downfall of the Muslim community in the external world, while the causes responsible for their trouble can be found in spiritual realm. No one can dilate upon this subject other than famous historian Tainvi. He says, the Islam is once more facing the West with her back to the wall, but this time odds are more heavily against her than they were even at the most critical moment of the crusade. For the modern West is superior to her not only in arms, but also in the technique of economic life on which military science ultimately depends. And above all, in spiritual culture, the inward force which alone creates and sustains the outward manifestation of what is called civilization. Tainbi rightly pointed out the spiritual factor that was responsible for the downfall of the Muslim world. It was spiritual decay which rendered them incapable of coping with any challenge. The real problem was the restoration of the spiritual culture that was eroded away with the passage of time. When they read in the Holy Quran God will not grant the unbeliever any way over the believer, but they were receiving rude shock not only in the domain of politics but also in the field of religious discourse. This was the scenario when a man of God emerged on the horizon. First of all, he read the scenario which nobody could be able to read. Allah says in the Holy Quran, La yumassu lil mutahirun. The promised Messiah categorically announced the people who calling themselves Muslim seek to spread Islam by means of the sword are not aware of the inherent qualities of Islam, and their conduct resembles the conduct of wild beasts. But some ulama were swayed by the idea that it was the sword of Islam that removed the dross and alloy from the hearts. As Maulana Mududi writes, when all the methods of persuasion failed, the Prophet took the sword, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, took the sword. That sword removed the mischief and the impurities of evil and the filth of the soul. Ulama spread their false notion of jihad far and wide. They perverted thousands of people and mesmerized with their false notion of jihad. These mesmerized people were used like a fuel by a big power in their internal warfare. Now, this terrorism has turned into a ferocious fire which consumed thousands of lives, including innocent children, but this fire does not seem to die down. Ulama don't seem to have realized that after 1300 years of Moses, when the Jews had to face similar challenge from the Roman civilization, it was not the military struggle of the Jews that could cope with the situation, but it was the efforts of followers of the Jesus who were equipped with only spiritual force that enabled them to penetrate into the European world and build a new civilization on the ruins of the old one. No one can render this service for Islam except the person for whom prophecy has been made by the Holy Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Therefore, the ulama, instead of misleading the Muslim towards the wrong notion based on their wishful thinking, should try to identify the Imam of the age in accordance with the example of previous Ummah. The Holy Prophet was appointed, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was appointed prophet, similar to that of Moses. Therefore, at this stage of the Muslim, at this stage, the Muslim Ummah can come out of this quagmire by directing the jihad towards base desire and by rejecting the Islam peacefully with the argument as was done by the Jesus after 1300 years of Moses. The promised Messiah came forth and made clear to everyone by showing powerful sign that God is still involved in the history of Muslim Ummah. In this way, promised Messiah rehabilitated the Muslim history and resolved the fundamental malaise of modern Muslim. At that time, Islam was under attack from all directions. In the struggle of promised Messiah for the rehabilitation of Islamic history, we find the glimpses of the victories achieved by the Muslim Ummah in the Battle of Badr and Hunain. But now the battlefield had changed into debating duel and sword into pen. According to the promised Messiah Islam, millions of books were published to refute Islam, and the Christian missionary and Arya Samaji Pandit launched scurrilous attack against Islam and used derogatory language against Allah with impunity. No one was there to counter them. In this catastrophic situation, the promised Messiah Islam came forth, wielded a crushing blow, and broke the back of their arrogance. Pandit Dayanand became as quiet as bird stopped chirping before an eagle. Pandit Dayanand started passing blasphemous remarks against Allah. He wrote, "The spirits are countless and so many that even Parmeshwar, God, does not know their number." Promised Messiah considered these remarks scornful and disdainful to the majesty of Allah. Promised Messiah Islam in his reply exposed the absurdity of these views by giving powerful argument. These articles were published in Safir-e-Hind between February 9 and March 9, 1878. Promised Messiah Islam wrote, "He will give the sum of 500 rupees as reward to any person, including the follower of Swami Dayanand, who can show that spirits are infinite and Parmeshwar does not know their number." The challenge sent a shivering wave down their spine and they became dumbfounded. And the end, They had to disown Pandit Dayanand's view, and Pandit Dayanand dared not to speak out. This victory made people remind the event recorded in the history of Islam, Allahu Ala wa Jal. Now we move toward the context of Brahine Ahmadiyya. The age of new discoveries fell heavy on the modernists. Some of them started disclaiming the fundamental sources of Islam. Their morale had sunk to the lowest ebb. Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan says, I can truly say that I have already given an example. Against this backdrop, when a young student went to a Maulvi with his misgiving, then what happened according to Dr. Basharat Ahmad Sahib, who says, I myself have been witness to many such incidents where a young man goes to a Maulvi with a certain question about Islam, and Maulvi comes up with some cooked up reply to which the young man makes an objection. This gets the Maulvi irritated, and bursting with anger, he shouts, Go, rejected one! What damage would it do to Islam if scum like you leave the faith? This was the scenario when a man of God emerged and announced a reward of 10,000 rupees, claimable by for anyone who could refute even a fifth of the argument given in Barahine Ahmadiyya or produce similar argument from their own scripture. The challenge remained uncontested till this day. This miraculous victory, like Badr, made it clear to the opponents of Islam that God is still involved in the history of the Muslim. God is great. Allahu Ala wa Jal. He it is who sent his messenger with guidance and religion of truth, that he may make it prevail over every other religion, even though the idolaters may dislike it. We witness many glimpses of previous Islamic history, which was once again repeating in the struggle of Promised Messiah alayhi salam. On October 1891, Promised Messiah alayhi salam went to Delhi to hold religious discourse with ulama in order to remove their misgiving. Due to intransigencies of the ulama, Promised Messiah gave them challenge for open debate. I have now been able to make the necessary arrangement and will proceed to Jamia Mosque at the time of Asr prayer on October 20. Promised Messiah wrote to them. Maulvi Naseer Hussain should also come to the mosque at that time to debate with me. May Allah curse person who does not appear at the Jamia Mosque on the appointed date. Maulvi Naseer Hussain and disciple became scared, and they started provoking the people against Promised Messiah Islam, and indoctrinated them into believing that killing of Hazrat Sahib was an act of great virtue. Having been inspired by the acrimonious speeches of the Maulvis, people were carrying knives and daggers in their hands. It was reported to the Promised Messiah Islam, but despite the death threat, the Promised Messiah reached Jamia Mosque on the appointed date and sat down on the ground. Maulvi Abdul Karim took a seat. Who took a seat next to him. The crowd around them was seething with anger. There was a raging crowd around them. Having sensed the hostile mood of the crowd, Maulvi Abdul Karim remarked, Sir, Hazur, the people are very agitated. Hazrat Hazur looked at him very calmly and said, Sahib, the dead can harm the living. Does it not make us recall the event of Ghare Saur? Does it not take the wayfarer from the station of should be to the destination of is? But it does not mean that the promised Messiah did not face any trial. He faced many trials, but he remained steadfast like a rock by treading the path of his beloved Master. On February 20, 1886, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad salam published a leaflet in which he announced this prophecy of Muslim oath. On August 7, 1887, Bashir Ahmad was born and died on November 14, 1888. As a result, Christian Arya, Hindus, and Muslim clerics started throwing ridicule. But Hazur remained steadfast under this severe trial. He delivered a Haqqani speech. He said, in reality, the chosen nations of God are put through tribulation. which pounced on them like a lion and enveloped them like the pitch of darkness of night. Storm raged around them, utter helplessness and turmoil engulfed them, and earthquake rocked them. They were humiliated, dishonored, and branded as liars and deceivers. They were left alone and without support. Even divine systems on which they relied heavily ceased for a time. It appeared that God's patronage had changed suddenly to his displeasure, and they had been left in need and difficulty because they were the target of divine wrath. Despite these tribulations, they did not waver for an instant from their firm resolve, and they did nor did they slow down or become disheartened. So the Prophet Messiah says, finally their tests were over and they had passed magnificently. They were blessed with success because of their perfect truthfulness. The crown of honor and dignity was placed on their head, and the criticism of the ignominious, ignorant people disappeared and became extinct like a bust bubble. So this was the promised by a stand, and he remained steadfast. When this prophecy fulfilled, even a Deobandi scholar, Maulvi Samiullah Faruqi, asked the people, "Put your hand on your heart and tell, has this prophecy not been fulfilled?" Another episode which appears like Ghazwa Ahzab, the promised Messiah after victory, achieved after victory. In Holy War, the promised Messiah, in the Holy War, the promised Messiah inflicted a crushing defeat upon the opponent. According to the prophecy of according to the prophecy of promised Messiah, Lekram and Abdullah Atham had met their terrible end. This led the Christian clergy devised a plan to charge Hazrat Sahib with attempted murder. They coerced Abdul Hamid to give false statement that he had come to kill Clark, hitting him over the head with a rock at the behest of Hazrat Sahib alayhi salam. The case of attempted murder was launched against Hazrat Sahib in August 1897. It was reported to Hazrat Sahib that Arya had joined their camp and Muhammad San Tali was also with them. Hazrat Sahib alayhi salam replied, "Our God is with us. Our God is with us, but they have not." In the end, Hazrat Sahib was exonerated as he had been informed ahead time. But Captain Douglas courageously declared the exoneration of Hazrat Musa Salam, and uh, thereby wreaked the carefully plan of the Christians. The district magistrate told Hazrat Sahib, "You can bring a suit against these sue against these Christian." But Hazrat Sahib replied, "Our sue against the Christian is peacefully in the heavenly court, is proceeding in the heavenly court, and the heavenly court is enough for us. We do not want to pursue sue in the earthly court." In 1896, an interfaith conference was held in Lahore to research the rationale of the belief of the different religions. This conference was, in fact, a contest of religion, in which each sent its best champion to prove the superiority of the faith with rational argument. Hazur's paper in this conference scored a decisive intellectual victory for Islam by comprehensively addressing all the issues under discussion, with reasoned argument from the Quran. After the conference, a large number of newspapers expressed their spontaneous admiration for this address and admitted that this was the best of all. This is what God has told Hazrat Sahib beforehand, and he had issued a poster to the effect. The conference was held from 26 to 28, and this address Hazrat Sahib was read by Hazrat Mauli Abdul Karim. Actually, I have actually mentioned. Having observed these resounding victories achieved by the promised Messiah and Jamaat during the course of its history, we can confirm from the core of our heart that this prophecy of the promised Messiah will also find its fulfillment in the near future, and no one can prevent its occurrence. According to promised Messiah, the third century after today will not yet have come to a close. There will then be only one religion that will prevail in the world, and only one leader. I have come only to sow the seed which has been sown by my hand. Now it will sprout and grow and flourish, and no one can arrest its growth. But what we are expected to show according to promised Messiah: stability, fortitude, istiqamat. Now at this stage, the whole world earnestly needs an elixir of Islamic teaching based on justice. Verily Allah enjoin in Allah, verily Allah enjoin justice and the doing of good to other, and uh, giving like kindred. Um, in Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i zil qurba. Before the advent of Islam, people would believe in racial superiority. The Holy Prophet ﷺ declared in his sermon that no Arab has got any superiority over a non-Arab. Similarly, no black is superior to white, and no white is superior to black. Islam has wiped out all the basis of discrimination between races and nations. But in 1859, Charles Darwin published a book titled On the Origin of Species. In that book, Darwin proposed a theory of natural selection or survival of the fittest. On the basis of it, some social Darwinists applied this theory to explain why some nations were more powerful than the other or had the right to dominate lesser people. This idea brought principle of injustice in international politics. In 1907, the promised Messiah Islam declared categorically to these arrogant people, "Oh Europe, you are not safe. Oh Asia, you too are not immune. Oh dwellers of island, no false god shall come to your rescue. I see cities fall and settlements laid waste." After 7 years of this warning, First World War broke out, which consumed 20 million lives and left 21 million injured. In 1924, Hazrat Muslim Maud made it quite clear to the organizer of League of Nations that unless five principles of Islam were kept in view, the League was bound to fail so long as people do not realize, in accordance with the Islamic teaching, that all mankind are one people. It will be impossible to establish peace. These leaders did not pay any heed, so they could not avoid another World War II, which was more horrible as compared to the First World War. We can say, "Oh Europe, you are not safe. Oh Asia, you too are not immune," as it is confirmed by famous historian Tainvi. Having studied this, almost all the civilization of the world has come to this conclusion. An arc of civilization that had traveled a time distance of some 5 or 6,000 years across the ocean of history was making for a reef which its crew would not be able to circumnavigate. This warning has placed heavy responsibility upon us. World cannot become immune from danger unless the supremacy of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is established over the world. We have to perform the responsibility of tabligh. From Sayyid Abdul Latif Shaheed to Sayyid Taleh Shaheed, Jamaat has been offering sacrifices. We have witnessed the process of restoration of Islamic history. We have witnessed once again the scene of وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ لَمَّا يَلْقُوا بِهِمْ, and the perfect and what we are required to do as steadfastness and istiqamat. And what is the istiqamat we are required to show? Promised Messiah mentioned it. The perfection of steadfastness is that the perfection of steadfastness is that when one is encircled by calamities, and life and honor and good name are in all peril in the cause of Allah, and no means of comfort are available, so much so that even vision and dream and revelation are suspended by God as a trial, and one is left helpless among the terrible danger at such a time when one should not lose heart. At such a time, one should not lose heart, nor retreat like a coward, nor let one's faithfulness but put in be put in doubt in the least, nor let one's faithfulness be put in doubt in the least. One should not let one's sincerity and perseverance be weakened. One should be pleased with one's disgrace. One should be reconciled to death. One should not wait for a friend to lend one his support in order to keep one firm, nor seek glad tidings from God because of the severity of the trial. One should stand straight and firm despite one's helplessness and weakness and lack of comfort from any direction. Come what may, one should present oneself for the sacrifice and should be completely reconciled to divine decree, and one should exhibit uh, no restlessness nor utter any complaint right till the end of the trial. This is the steadfastness which leads to God. This is the this is that the perfume of which still reaches us. This is that the perfume of which still reaches us from the dust of messenger and prophet and faithful one and martyr. May Allah enable us to show that required steadfastness so that we may be able to see the day when हाकम तमाम दुनिया पे मेरा मुस्तफ़ा हो. जज़ाकल्लाह.
Jazakumullah, Aslan Jaza, Professor Sahib. Mashallah, you've given, as we anticipated, a very scholarly exposition, mashallah, on a topic that I think is very exhaustive and very comprehensive. And we would be very privileged if you were to come back and enlighten us further on mashallah, such an important topic as well, in which you touched on many important historical aspects and also emphasized the blessed way in which Allah has kept His hand over the Jamaat and protected it against all opposition and enmity, mashallah. We have many compliments rather than questions for you, Professor Sahib. Mashallah, lots of viewers who have commented on initially looking forward to your lecture, and also a message from Muhammad Anwar Sahib, who has thanked you for throwing light on the very valuable contribution of the Jamaat for the rehabilitation of Islamic history, and also from Tayyib Mahmood Sahib from New Mexico in America, who says that your lecture has been very inspiring and very informative, mashallah. So Jazakumullah for giving us the huge honor of being with us this evening and giving your time.
Jazakallah, I will pay my special thanks to you. You give me opportunity to speak to you. I offer my apology for my shortcomings, and I hope you will accept my apology due to my accent. I think my accent is not up to standard. Therefore, I offer my apology, and I am very thankful to the people, and I hope they will contribute in this direction, in this line.
And Professor, there's no need for any apologies. Mashallah, we could understand you perfectly well. So no need for any apologies. But apologies for us for any shortcomings. Sometimes we face some technical issues with our broadcast. I think we experienced some of that in the initial part of this lecture. But do remember the lame department in your special prayers. That would be much appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Jazakallah.
So just a reminder to our viewers to tune in as normal to our weekly lectures. Next Monday, we will have our next Urdu lecture. And also a week today, on Tuesday, we will have our next English lecture delivered by Kaleem Tahir Sahib. As always, we are very much keen to hear from yourselves of your own recommendations for speakers and topics. So please do get in touch with us through our social media accounts, or you can email us at taleemonline@ahmadiyyauk.org. That's taleemonline@ahmadiyyauk.org. Just leaves for me to now hand back to our respected speaker tonight, Professor Sahib, to please lead us in a silent prayer.
Please join me in silent prayer. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakumullah asna jaza. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam. Once again, my